What is it about Jewish people that make them prosper financially? Well, you'll almost never find Jews tinkering with their cars on the weekends or mowing their lawns. That's what Daniel Lapin says. And there's a very good reason for that. And it lies within the business secrets of the Bible. Take a look.
Most everyone would like to have more wealth and prosperity. Few, however, manage to attain it. Rabbi Daniel Lapin is known as America's rabbi. He says financial success is the result of doing the right things. In his new book, Business Secrets from the Bible, Rabbi Lapin uses simple concepts to help increase income regardless of your faith. He'll change the way you think about money and help you make more of it.
To say he's my favorite rabbi would be an understatement, but he's here with us again. It's a pleasure to introduce once again to the 700 Club audience, Rabbi Daniel Lapin. Good to see you.
Fantastic to be together with you again, Pat. Thank you.
You've written a landmark book. It really is a fabulous book. It's called Business Secrets in the Bible. How come Jewish people don't mow their own lawns on Saturdays?
Well, it really comes from the end of the book of Genesis, where Jacob's 147 years old and time is going by, and finally he's about to be taken home to his Father in heaven. And you'd think that, you know, after a long and difficult life, he'd gather his sons together and he'd say, "Boys, God bless you, I'm gone." Yeah. Instead, he takes 20, 30 verses giving a Reuben, this is your blessing. Simon, this is your blessing. Judah, this is your blessing. In other words, he's laying the foundation of specialization. You're not just one big clump of people. Each one of you is going to find the area in which you can best serve your brethren. And this idea, which wasn't found in general economics until the 18th century, Adam Smith realized the principle of specialization, lies deeply embedded in ancient Jewish wisdom's understanding of the Bible.
In other words, somebody's got to cook the bread, somebody's got to make the machine, somebody has to sew the cloth. They can't all do it together.
Exactly, and it's even more than that, because if we each take care of our own needs, then we don't need one another. But since we specialize as part of God's plan, the result of that is that I pray for the welfare of my customers, I pray for the welfare of my vendors, I pray for the welfare of the people who work for me, because we're all wrapped up in this web of interdependency, which is exactly what our Father in heaven wants us to be doing. So naturally, when you correctly said you won't, in Jewish neighborhoods, you do not find Jews lying under their cars on Sunday afternoon. No. I pay one of the best mechanics around to take care of my BMW. That's what I do. I'd be crazy to take my time doing it myself.
Polishing diamonds, not fixing cars.
Exactly. I'm taking care of what I can do best, and then I'm happy to pay him. Or for me to mow my lawn. I'm the worst lawn mower in the world, but the young man who lives down the street from me, he's one of the best. And he's happy to do it, I'm happy. And so it's really important that each one of us finds our highest and best way to serve our fellow human beings, which is another way of taking care of God's other children. And that's why we speak of customer service and worship service, because one of the ways of worshiping our Creator is by taking care of his other children.
Is that one of the principles of Jewish finances, to look after your customers and to be
one of the great secrets? And again, I present 40 secrets in this book, which is, it's not a book about investing, because investing, you really got to have some money. It's not a book of getting out of debt, because you want to get out of debt, you speak to my friend Dave Ramsey. But this is about making more money. This is about saying, you know what, this year I want to make twice as much money as I made last year. Not 100 times, not 50 times, twice as much.
Is that a biblical concept, making money?
Making money?
Yeah.
Let me put it this way. Right. If a young person came to you and said, look, I can't decide what to do. I either want to go into politics, actually they don't say that, I want to go into public service. I always distrust occupations that need a euphemism. Have you noticed?
Right.
Public service, or I'd like to go into business and make a lot of money. Who is better for America? Who's better for you? Who's better for me? When somebody tells me he wants to go into public service or politics, I think to myself, 10 more fingers in my wallet. But when somebody tells me I want to go into business, then the only way he can succeed in business, or she, is by making products or services that enhance my life. And that's why I say, yes, I'm not going to say God wants you to be rich, but God wants you to be striving for more money. Money is a spiritual creation of our Creator. It's not something that just came about.
You said something here, too, that so what surprised most people is that cities were really a creation of God, that men had to get together in cities. Why was that?
Well, that's exactly right. We find that after Cain kills Abel, God gives him the punishment of isolation from people, basically. You're always going to have to keep traveling, and things you plant won't grow. And finally he realizes, and so he names his son Enoch. And so he took one life, he shows that he's atoned, he shows God that he understands, he brings a new life into the world, Enoch. In Hebrew, in the Lord's language, yes, Enoch means I'm educated, education. I've got it, I caught on what I did wrong. And now he builds a city, what, for 3 human beings? Well, that's not the point. You know, build it and they'll come. A city is a glorious place. A city is where you've got the best of everything. Sadly, you can also have the worst of everything. If you build your city without God in a godless manner, you'll have massive problems. But a city built basically as people like Cotton Mather and some of the great Christian leaders of colonial America, the city on the hill. If it's that kind of a city, a godly city, it's a city where everybody can make more money than they can anywhere else.
You find these principles in Hebrews. I know one thing in your book, you talk about, of course, the word for hand is yad, and you said a friend is yad.
Yes, of course.
Well, tell us about that.
Well, what's interesting about that is that it's curious how throughout Western civilization, and Western civilization sprang from the pages of the Bible. I mean, obviously, what we think of as the West is the creation of God's book, basically God's message to mankind. Right. And it's funny that the symbol or action of friendship is shaking hands. Right. Why isn't it rubbing elbows or, you know, noses. Or noses? Yeah, I mean, like, what's with hands? And one of the fallacious explanations, which I've debunked, is that, oh, well, this is because when people used to meet on the road, if they shook hands with one another, then they couldn't be reaching for their sword. Well, all I know is I can handle a knife with my left hand as well. Wouldn't that be a surprise for the guy whose right hand I'm holding while I take him out with my left hand? It's nonsense, complete nonsense. No, the reason is because in the Lord's language, which people used to all know, I mean, Hebrew was widely understood. And everybody, that's why I say today everyone needs a rabbi, right? Because not everyone knows Hebrew. I've got to sort of help people along a little bit. But when they did, the idea of, in Hebrew, is one of the great words in Hebrew for a friend is yedid, which is spelt hand. The 2 Hebrew words, basically 2 hands clasping becomes, and to this day, the picture of clasped hands is a symbol of friendship.
What else? Where did the word money come from? Is that a Hebrew word, money?
The word money itself?
Yeah.
Well, yes. The Hebrew word is counting, and that money is the Hebrew word for
money is counting.
Is counting. And what do you? If you say to anybody, counting, what do you count? The first thing you think of, I think, is you count money.
Well, you mentioned in your book that people had to keep accounts, that if you're going to succeed, you've got to know where your money is.
Oh, look, I mean, if you want to lose weight, or if you've got to keep a record. You've got to measure your weight and keep records. If you want to become biblical in your money, and I really do. I mean, when I travel to churches, Pat, I've got to tell you, my heart breaks when I speak at 30, 40 churches a year. Every now and then I come to a church where I see deferred maintenance. I see a stressed out pastor who hasn't been able to pay the mortgage. I see members of the church who just not. For me, it's the greatest blessing. It's what my ministry is all about, to bring them business secrets from the Bible, so that when I come back a year later, I see a different institution, a totally different church.
The whole idea of knowing how to do balance sheet accounting, or, you know...
You don't have to become a CPA, but you do need to be able to understand financial statements. And it's easy to do. You just got to be able to do it. But
that's a key. I mean, the Jewish person from the Bible would always know how to count his money and know where it was.
Not only that, but the Hebrew words for counting not only means money in the case of money, but each of the 4 Hebrew words that mean counting also mean successful person of accomplishment.
Tell me about those. The successful person?
Yeah. In Hebrew, there's a word poked, Or how about the word noseh? It means to count, but it's also the same word in the book of Numbers where Moses appoints the princes for each tribe. That's exactly the same word, the princes. So in other words, people of accomplishment, people of achievement, people of aristocratic bearing are all people who can count. And that's true in everything. I mean, you've got to be able to measure your achievement, because if you don't, the days pass and nothing gets accomplished.
That was certainly true with John D. Rockefeller. He was basically an accountant. He kept exquisite books. Every penny he spent, everything he gave away, down to the last dime, he had it all written in a book of accounts.
Yeah, people laugh at that, and you know, he may have been a little extreme, but then his wealth was also extreme.
He came to the richest man in the world.
Yes,
so
exactly right.
Badly.
But for most of us, the other extreme is more common, where there's no record keeping and no meticulous accounting for our time, for our money, for our achievements. It's important.
And that accounts for failure, doesn't it?
And that's one of the secrets, is keeping records, not only financial, but also life records, a journal.
Point out that there's no word in Hebrew for retirement.
I told you that, and I'm very pleased. Last time we were together, I told you there's no Hebrew word for retirement. And the general rule is that when there's no Hebrew word for something, it's a bad idea. So, for instance, there's no Hebrew word for adolescent. Because when you think about it, an adolescent's just somebody who wants all the privileges of adulthood with none of the responsibilities, right? So no word for adolescent, no word for retire. And I'm very happy to see that you've taken that lesson to heart.
Totally to heart, man. I just can't, they won't let me retire. I'm trying, but they won't let me.
Absolutely out of the question.
But there's no word in Hebrew for it.
No, there isn't, because it's a bad concept.
Well, what have we done in our country? We have violated that totally. People, we've got to pay them when they're 65 years old.
Well, we violated a lot of things in this country. I mean, right now, for instance, there is the implication that if you've made money, there's something morally suspect about you. That somehow making money is a bad thing. There's another word in Hebrew doesn't exist, the word fair. Because you'll hear politicians saying, well, he is rich, he hasn't paid his fair share. The funny thing about fair is it's not defined.
That's right.
I would think that when many politicians say, we want people to pay their fair tax, they probably mean 100%.
That's right. There isn't anything short of that.
You know, fair doesn't mean anything at all. Fair is whatever I choose to want it to mean.
But there's no word in Hebrew for fair?
No word for fair. Yeah.
Why not?
There's words for justice.
Yes.
Because in the Bible and in biblical thinking, agreements and contracts are sacrosanct. They're very important. If we shake hands on something, that is an agreement. But we'd never say, Pat, I got an idea. Why don't we go into business together and we'll have a fair, equitable distribution of the profits? No, we don't do that. We say, here's what it's going to be. It's going to be 50% and 50%, or it's going to be 43% and 57%. But we don't just use loose and ill-defined concepts, because that creates bad arrangements, bad relationships.
What is another key principle of wealth that you found in the Bible?
Well, one of the great ones that has always served the Jewish people very successfully and very, very well, and I mean, I'm not saying there's no poor Jews, but Jews are disproportionately financially effective, and I wanted to bring 40 of the most important secrets from the Bible to everybody. One that's beautiful is in the second book of Kings. The prophet Elisha is approached by a widow who has nothing, and absolutely nothing. And he says to her, listen, you've got to go back and search in your house. She says, I've got nothing. How many times do I have to tell you? He says, you've got to find something. So she finds one teensy-weensy little jar of oil.
Right.
And then he says, okay, this is going to work. And she says, now go borrow 50-gallon oil drums from everybody, thousands of them, right? And she becomes the first oil tycoon in the Middle East. Now, this is a miracle. It's an absolute miracle.
That's right.
Once it's a miracle, why couldn't Elisha have poured oil out of his thumb? I mean, God can fill thousands of barrels of oil from a thumb just as easily as from a little bottle of oil. Yet he made this poor widow go back and search until she found, because each and every one of us has a bottle of oil inside her. We have that tiny little reserve we overlook, something we think is insignificant. She said, I got nothing. He said, go back and search. Little bottle of oil. Oh, that's very significant. You got to have something inside you. Every one of us has that little spark of potential. That's why it's oil. Oil contains energy. God packed chemical energy into oil. We've got that inside each every one of us. That is the kickstart of our own economic miracles.
What is the modern state doing to violate God's principles and destroying itself in the process? What are they doing?
You have an hour or two to spend on that?
Well, let's make believe you're Adam Smith and you wrote your book in 2 pages. What?
A number of things. One of them, of course, is increasing the size of government and increasing taxation. Essentially, that turns people into slaves. Ultimately, the Marxist vision is slavery. You work for us, you give everything to us, and we take care of everything. We take care of your children's education, we take care of your retirement, we take care of your health care. Oh, wait a sec, we're already there. That's exactly what they're doing.
And they also think they can borrow. What about borrowing? What does the Bible have to say about that?
Needless to say, a very bad way to go about doing business. It's a very bad way to try and build a sustainable economy, whether it's an individual or a family or a nation. The borrowing is immoral. It's essentially taking from people who are not yet born. But then many of the people who are doing that are really fairly comfortable with taking a lot of things from the unborn, sure, including their lives.
Is this book available? Wherever?
That book is absolutely available.
Where can one get copies?
You can get them anywhere that books are sold. You can also, my website, which can be found on your website, is youneedarabbi.com.
All right,
it's available there as well.
It's a fantastic book. You ought to get it if you want to learn how to keep money, make money, and do the biblical way. It's called Business Secrets of the Bible, and Daniel Lapin.